Today I'm going to share with you guys one of the tanks in the rack system. It's a 20-gallon long that's got a bunch of orange shrimp, some snails, and like 10 different species of plants. Let's jump into it. This 20 long has been set up for about a year now, just like most of the tanks in the rack system, closer to probably 10 months. And as you can see, we got some blue mystery snails. There's actually a few white ones crawling around here somewhere. And then we got a bunch of orange Neocaridina shrimp. There's some congregated over here. I just fed some algae wafers, spirulina wafers. And there's another group hanging out over here that you can't see as well because of the gravel color. And there's also a bunch of different species of plants. There's actually some nerite snails in here as well. The original plan for this tank was actually Pandagara, and I actually bought a few and they were living in this tank, and I ended up losing them slowly one by one over a few weeks of having them. So it's definitely something I want to do in the future. After the Pandagara passed, I moved some orange shrimp. I have orange shrimp in another tank over here that were doing pretty good. And this tank was kind of sitting empty with just some snails. So I wanted to throw, I think I threw originally like 15, 20 shrimp. And as you can see, there's a lot more than there now. And if we look closely over here, you can see that there's that bright orange spot. Those are, females essentially getting ready to be pregnant again. So orange shrimp or cherry shrimp, they're the exact same species. If you're not familiar, they're just a different color variation. They come in blues and yellows. These are all the Neocaridina species. They prefer the hard water as opposed to the soft water that the Caridina species prefer. But we'll talk a little bit more about the shrimp in a minute. I really want to talk about these plants and the wood. Now, this piece of wood right here is Mopani wood. I think it's the only piece of Mopani wood I have in the fish cave, and I really want to get some more of it. I don't know where it comes from. Drop a comment down below if you know where this comes from. I'm not sure where it's native to, but it's really cool. It's got this two-tone kind of look, almost like a marbled kind of look to it. And I have a few pieces of anubias that were glued on. There's actually one got uplifted and it's floating over here, so I need to secure that back down. There's also this Dwarf Sag, which is pretty much my only carpeting plant that I have here in the fish cave. And as you can see, it kind of shoots runners across. I definitely recommend, if you guys are starting out in a planted aquarium and you want some type of carpet or a carpeting effect, in my opinion, Dwarf Sag, has been the best for me. So I definitely recommend you give it a shot. There's a lot of other ones out there that may be a prettier looking or thicker carpet or just better, but they require CO2 in a lot of cases. In this tank, I actually have 2 lights on it right now. I moved one over from the cichlid tank just to shoot this video because normally I just run one standard fluorescent light. That's something I want to do, is upgrade my lights, not because I need to. I'm still growing plants just fine, but obviously better light would mean faster growth, a little healthier plants. I don't claim to have the prettiest plants in the world, but I think I'm growing them just fine. But slowly but surely, I'll try to improve by, getting some low budget kind of LED lights that I've been looking at, and just make the tank maybe look this bright in general as opposed to just for the video. But you can grow plants with some basic lights. You don't need anything crazy. And all this growth, this crypt back here was definitely just done with this, basic fluorescent bulbs, as well as there's a little Dwarf Lily here that it shoots up some runners every once in a while. There's not one going right now. And then there's also some just moss I kind of have just thrown around here. There's actually some small pieces of some wasser tang. There's not much of it, and it's growing slow for me, but it's definitely, holding on and doing okay. And there's some moss or what have you growing on the back of this piece of driftwood. You may have noticed that I have a Pleco Cave in here. I never did put any Plecos in here. The plan was to potentially put some in here. At one point I had Plecos in like every single tank, and I was breeding them like crazy. And a few months back I decided to put the kibosh on that simply because it doesn't make any sense. I couldn't get rid of that many Plecos anyway, and I couldn't keep them, so it just didn't make sense to keep breeding them. Another type of snail in here is this rabbit snail. This one's still kind of a juvenile rabbit snail. I have one big adult and a few that are, I would call them sub-adult. This guy or girl is still kind of, I'd say like the juvenile stage, only a little over an inch long. But these rabbit snails in the stores, they're not the cheapest snail out there. Sometimes they're close to $10 by me, but they're a really cool snail. They get to a good size. In my opinion, they're kind of like a really big Malaysian trumpet snail that actually has some color and a cool look to it. But then it also doesn't breed as fast, so it's not going to really overwhelm your aquarium like a Malaysian trumpet snail would. If you guys noticed, I have the water down a little bit in this tank, and that's because I'm trying to breed these mystery snails. I've done it before. Actually, these mystery snails you see in this tank were all bred in another tank inside. And if you're not familiar with mystery snails, it really only takes one clutch to have a bunch. So I had one clutch. Actually, I had 5 clutches laid. I only let one clutch hatch. And from that one clutch, I got dozens and dozens of mystery snails. And like I said, I put the kibosh on that, gave mystery snails, littered them throughout my tanks. Recently, I've been wanting to put out another batch of them, which is why I've been keeping the water level a little lower in the tank. They lay their eggs above the water line, and they need that kind of humidity. And then this tank is actually on an auto water change system, as are all the tanks in this rack system. So I just kind of drain the tank a little bit after I do a water change, just to keep that level. And I'm keeping an eye out for eggs. They lay this kind of like pink sack above the water line. A few more species of plants in here. There's a Java fern windeloff. You can kind of see the top of the Java fern. It's got that kind of little funky little waves to it, and that's the windeloff type. And right behind it is some kabamba that isn't doing so hot. I believe it's kabamba. Floating up top there is a little bit of anubias, but also some hornwort there. That's some hornwort, and some different types of crypts. And there's a bulb plant over here. Let me know, leave in the comments down below if you know what type of plant this is. It's kind of cool. It looks like a grass. This little bulb or tuber thing is actually part of that plant. This thing has died back and comes back and dies back and comes back. I got it from a friend, so I don't really know what kind of plant it is. It's in like the onion family, I'm assuming. But if you know in the comments, let me know down below what the name of that plant is, because I'm really curious. The plant is actually throwing some lily pads or some type of pad up here, and then it's got these little, like it's gonna flower. The substrate in this tank is just some potting soil, and then I capped it with a little bit of black diamond blasting sand here, and I got that from Tractor Supply. It's not as cheap as the pool filter sand that you could get from Home Depot, but it's essentially the equivalent. It's the black sand equivalent. My opinion, do some research, but if you want some cheap substrate, look at pool filter sand for white, and then like this black diamond blasting sand for black substrate. It itself is not great for growing plants. That's why I said I put some potting soil below it. And then over here, the same thing, it's got potting soil, and then on top of it is just some river rock kind of gravel that I had laying around that I got with a tank I bought. And my initial intentions were to kind of make this separation between this kind of really smooth, crisp, clean separation. However, obviously over the months, it's kind of littered and doesn't look as pretty. The inspiration came from my friend Jose. I'll put a picture of his tank, but he came over to my house, saw a tank I was doing. He got inspiration, and then I was inspired by that. So this is kind of the result of after looking at Jose's tank. So big shout out to Jose for that inspiration. I think that's really cool. One of the biggest things that I love in this hobby is kind of sharing it with your friends and fellow hobbyists and getting inspiration from others and doing your own thing. But obviously, you learn and grow from, sharing your experience with others, watching others. And I think it's a really cool part of this hobby and this community. I'm really happy how this tank is coming along. Like I said, it never was planned to have a bunch of shrimp in it, but they seem to really enjoy it. And there's tons of berry ones. There's lots of little babies going around in this tank. So I'm not really sure what I'm planning to do long term. Although I know that these algae wafers from Aquatic Arts, I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I literally was Googling foods. This is probably 5-6 months ago, Googling different foods, and I needed a spirulina food to get the bloodworms. And I came across these, and I feed them to blackworms, I feed them to blackworms, but the shrimp and snails seem to really love them. I'll drop a link down below to my Amazon affiliate link if you do use it. The price is the same, but it helps me out, helps the channel out. I get a little money, and I'll use it towards the new camera. As far as long term with this tank, I'm not really sure. I may want to add some schooling fish. I'm thinking about putting those rasbora heads that we have in this tank. I know that they may pick out some of the shrimp, although I'm pretty sure with the rasbora head, they're probably safe. If you guys have any experience keeping rasboras with cherry shrimp, let me know in the comments down below. I know there's definitely some risk, I'm sure, involved, but I think I might take that risk. Pandagara, I definitely want to add back Pandagara into the fish cave. I'm not sure if they'll go in this tank, as I'm sure they'll definitely pick at the shrimplets, and those guys are pretty quick. But I'm not in a big hurry to do anything, because right now I really enjoy just kind of watching this tank, and I can get plenty of enjoyment watching snails and shrimp, and I have other tanks to watch the fish swim. But we'll see where the future takes us. I'm always keep my options open, always looking for new ideas, seeing what kind of catches my fancy. I don't try to pigeonhole myself into one particular thing, because there's so many options out there, and I'm always trying to, learn and grow and discover new things. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to check out another fish cave video, there'll be one right there for you guys. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Stay positive and stay passionate.